So in this video we are going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We are now on episode 34 of the series, and in the last episode we saw a few major events happen following the conclusion of World War I, the most important of which being the founding of the GCL, or the Global Cooperation League. This is an Indian-led alliance, or not alliance, a group of countries rather, that is kind of focused on stopping war from happening again, and it's also functioning as a very large world bank with India at the head. But if you do end up enjoying this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe, as we are on the road to 2,000 subscribers and all the support is greatly appreciated, and let's get straight into it. So, first things first, we need to come to the alliance layer because there is something that is going to be taking place here, and that is going to be the abolishment of an alliance, and that alliance is the Circle Alliance. These three countries were never particularly close, they only joined as they had ambitions in World War I, but their differences are showing once again, and they will be separating. But now we need to move over to the Middle East, because there is actually going to be a unity event taking place, and that is going to be between Egypt and the Arabian country. So, Egypt, following the First World War, they are a very strong economy, they are doing pretty decently. However, you cannot say the same for this Arabian country. They are very much struggling. They always have had a bad economy, but them losing World War I kind of chucked it in the drain, so they are looking for any way to improve their situation, and uniting with Egypt actually seems to be a pretty good method. But they are not just going to be uniting with Egypt, I'll show you what I mean in a second, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So this is what we see taking place with this Arabian country. As we can see, part of them joined Egypt, however other parts decided to join different countries or do different things. This area in the south, this orange team decided to break away as they didn't really want to unite with Egypt, and another part of the country I just gave it to the Qatar puppet state, as it kind of looked weird on the map. But yeah, Egypt is making a comeback. Well, not really, but kind of. But now we need to move over to Asia, because there is going to be some things that are going to be happening here. Now, one thing I need to talk about is the economical state of the world. It is still declining. And for some weird reason, it seems to be a lot of the countries in the GCL, their economies are not actually getting better, but they are kind of declining. Some of their stocks are going down, and it's just a very weird, sketchy thing that's going on. We are even seeing this in countries like China, and as well as even France. They experience some slight economic downturn. But really the only members that don't experience this are very core states to India, which is quite interesting to see. But anyway, we need to talk about what's going on in Asia. So currently, these 6 countries right here are going through a very bad situation economically. First of all, these 3 countries used to be one nation, however they split up and that made their situation even worse. This country down here just lost World War I, and these 2 guys are really not in that hot of a situation. So what's going to be happening here is just complete chaos. In the yellow team and the northern dark orange team, we see a bunch of rebels break out all over the place, and these guys are basically just anarchist rebellions. They, all their goal is just cause chaos. They're basically just like looters, so they just go into all the towns in these countries and just take all the stuff that they need, because it's not being provided to them by the government. They then spread over into this grey country, which I will change because it's kind of hard to see. But these guys pop up and it immediately becomes a very major issue for all of these countries. And unfortunately for these countries, it starts to spread into their very populated areas. A lot of people in their major cities or more crowded areas, they are really struggling. A lot of them are starving. And yeah, this kind of anarchist sort of rebellion just breaks out everywhere, and it becomes a major issue for all of these guys. Now, in other places, it's a little bit different. Specifically, over in these 3 countries, which had previously been one, a different type of rebellion breaks out, and that is actually going to be communist rebels. So, these communist rebels, they are inspired by the fact that there was a communist manifesto written basically stating that all people in these countries could be equal, and a lot of the civilians like that idea because these countries, they're very authoritarian, and that's been proven with the fact that the government has been hoarding all the food and stuff like that. So these guys declare their, I guess, it's not really independence because they aren't declaring a new state, but they just break away and they start rebelling all over these guys. Now, this is actually going to be a pretty big test for the GCL. This is the first crisis that they have had to face. Now, this country over here isn't in the GCL, so they will not be receiving any support, but these 5 other countries will be attempted to be saved by the GCL. Now, how is the GCL going to be helping these countries out? Well, they will be supplying military to a few of these nations. Now, these 2 guys over here, the Indians, don't really bother helping them out. They kind of just see them as a lost cause. But specifically, these 2, they will be helping them out as these guys have also experienced some communist rebellions. And yeah, just overall, this region is in utter chaos. The anarchist movements over here kind of just meet up into one weird shaped faction. And at this point, they kind of establish their own country. It will be known as the Anarchist Front of Central Asia. Very original name, but whatever. Now, the only issue is they kind of start to spread a lot more into this grey country, which these communist rebels don't like. At this point, the communist rebels have basically taken control of the Grey Team's government, and they see this as the anarchists encroaching on their territory. So, what the communists decide to do is they start invading into this anarchist territory, and yeah, this starts a very interesting process. It can be described as just complete chaos. Now, India, they try and send diplomats over to the anarchists and the communists. I don't know if they thought that would work, because it doesn't work. All that does is make it so that these guys are angry at India. They already know that India is funding the countries that they're fighting against. Now, this red country over here, something pretty interesting actually happens to them, and that is they begin to be invaded by a foreign power, and that is going to be none other than the fascist Chinese country down here. These guys begin to rapidly invade in, as they are looking on building strength. They capture the one major city that this country has other than their capital, and this area over here falls, and then they begin to blitz over to the capital. These guys have their hands on tanks, which is an Indian invention, and they are really using it, and they are showing the strength of this. Once they knock out this red country, they look at the communists and they're like, hey, we hate you, so they decide to keep going. They absolutely smash their forces into this communist group, and it kind of just leads to even more chaos. Now, luckily for the communists, the blue country decides to just peace out of the war and take their war spoils up here. But yeah, it's just one big mess. At this point, the GCL is kind of just like, yeah, there's no way we're solving this, which is a pretty big failure in the eyes of a lot of countries in the world for the GCL. Some countries that were thinking about joining the organisation, like a lot of these Asian countries, even going into some Eastern European countries, they look at this and they're like, yeah, these guys really aren't doing anything, we're going to stay out of it. Which helps them out in a weird way, which I will reveal soon. But going back to these weird rebellions, they just continue on, and they just go everywhere. At this point, the orangey country down here just agrees to the anarchists, saying, we will let you have some of our territory, just please leave us alone. They will accept that, and they will then focus on the gold team up here, who they managed to capture the capital of. Now, really the only country who is able to push these guys back is the green team down here. They are arguably the strongest out of these countries, which doesn't really make much sense, but they are able to kick out this communist area, and after the communists just consolidate over control of this grey country, and with the anarchists basically just walking through the yellow team, these guys will just peace out of the war, and we can go ahead and take a look at this very weird peace treaty. So, if we take a look at this peace treaty, we can see that what has taken place is a ginormous mess in Central Asia. These are some interesting borders, to say the least. We can see that the anarchist and communist groups have gotten their own nations. This guy over here took some land, of course. And yeah, overall, just a massive mess. Really not nice to look at. But now we need to move down here to India, because an event is going to be taking place that is kind of predictable, and that is going to be India doing an invasion of a certain country. And that is going to be the Tamil country right down here. So in the last episode, these guys left India's alliance, and India was not too happy about that. So India will be launching an invasion into said country. They'll be quickly moving down and capturing this one major city, and then they will be moving across and cutting this guy in half. They'll then be taking this group of provinces up here, and they will be continuing to move down, now sieging the capital. They attempt to take this major city, however a superior force does repel them for a while. However, they then regroup and rebuild, launch another offensive, and take the city, along with a lot of this southern area. The Tamil country does attempt to make a pushback on the main front line, however with the capital falling, this land area on the Indian subcontinent does all fall, and they are forced to flee over here to Sri Lanka. So let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. And in this peace treaty, it's pretty simple. The Tamil country is kicked to Sri Lanka, and India takes the rest of the mainland. But now we need to move over to Europe, because there is a pretty interesting development growing. So, in the Balkans, there are a bunch of weak countries that have, throughout history, been dominated by their neighbours. And they are going to be banding together, and they will be forming the Balkan League. And this league is going to be important soon. I'll be representing them with a 6-point star. So I will give each one of these countries a 6-point star, and the countries that I am referring to are these three guys right here. Now, Pink Romania, they like their neutrality, so they will be staying out of it. But these three guys, they kind of just form this alliance, and yeah, that's all I have to say there. Next up, we need to head back over to the Americas because there is going to be some more decolonization taking place. First of all, this Irish colony had been given semi-independence in the last episode. However, a lot more of it is now calling for independence. This colony has really grown away from their Irish predecessors, so the rest of this colony will be reluctantly given independence. First of all, the rest of this area over here is going to be given to this country. And after that, a new orange country is going to be formed right here. Now, you might have noticed I changed the colour of that country there. I really didn't like it. I don't know why I made the colours so dark here. It's like very sad. So I'm going to go ahead and change that a little bit. I think I like that more nice and bright. Also over here, I might change that a little bit. It's just really hard with the colours, I don't know why. I used to do well with colours, but I'm not really good with it anymore. I don't know what happened. But yeah, new countries over here, as well as this purple team right over here, also getting their independence, just like so. And yeah, I'm really liking the colour scheme here. So yeah, and now after that, there is one final event that I need to talk about this episode, and that is going to be over here in Asia. And it is all about the GCL. Now, in the GCL, there are a few leading members, this being Tokyo, China, India, and Persia, as well as France as well, but they're in Europe. So, there is something taking place. Now, China has been suspicious of fraudulent activity on India's part for a while, relating to the whole World Bank sort of thing that India set up. And in their investigation of India that has been happening very secretly, they actually find something rather shocking. And that is that during World War I, a war in which China and India were allies with each other, India was the one that funded those Japanese rebels. Now, you might be wondering, why the hell did India fund rebels against their own ally? And furthermore, why did they make this country a leading member in the organisation? And China realises that India is trying to squeeze China and trying to kind of hurt them, you know, just squeeze them into a corner in their position, kind of trying to surround them and weaken them. And when China discovers this, they are going to go over to India and be like, what the hell is this? And India is going to be like, well, India doesn't have a response because there's nothing to justify that. And with that, China leaves the GCL. Yeah, that probably wasn't the greatest move, China. Because as soon as China leaves the GCL, India's like, oh no, our plan to ruin their economy and surround them isn't going to work anymore. Hey, I have a great idea, let's declare war on them. So, the Triangle Alliance declares war on China, along with Korea, surprisingly, and Tokyo. But that is what we will be covering in the next episode. So, if you did enjoy this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.